Okay. Um, cool. POIs in the chat, please. Would just like to apologize in advance to my partner for waking up around 8 minutes ago. Cool. Let's get started. 3, 2, 1. Firstly, just in terms of framing, we think that as a moderately successful pirate, that probably means that you're in like the top 30 percentile, I guess, of pirates, and however they measure success, probably in terms of like murder and killing other people and looting and things of the sort. But in terms of what you care about as a specific actor, we think the first thing you probably prioritize is like not dying, because dying necessarily means that you lose out on all other potential life outcomes and the ability to like do anything or like choose anything that you want to do with the rest of your life. So that probably just cuts off all possibility for you. But the second thing you probably care about is like wealth, as well as just general financial security and like stability that can be brought about, to the extent in which like money often means that you are granted access to more choices, and choices are probably what we want to maximize at the end of the day, because we don't know about the specific preferences of this pirate then. Okay, 3 arguments in this speech. Firstly, why do we think other people will sell you out, and why is this likely to be bad? Firstly, because we tell you that everybody else is facing a similar deal, right? To the extent in which there are probably going to be lots of people who will like cave and end up becoming pirate hunters on like either side of the house, because the deal probably sounds pretty good. People care about like financial stability generally. We'll give you reasons and case as to why this is probably a good deal. So even if you don't individually buy into it, there are going to be a massive amount of people on both sides that will. But secondly, and very importantly, King George probably just hates pirates at this point, which is why he issued this in the first place. So even if he doesn't capture you right now, if you ever get close to his territory, you'll probably get captured in the future, and he'll probably send out like a lot of like spies and other people to like capture pirates or like figure out where they reside. He'll probably send a lot of ships for this specific goal, because pirates have been very damaging for his economy, which is why he has this set up in the first place. But thirdly, and very importantly, you also just have a lot of pirates on your ship probably as well that are considering leaving or that have left. So you probably know that like your time as a pirate is limited in the status quo anyways. All of this just necessarily means that there is a good chance that you will get captured on the opposition side of the house if you don't like concede and end up becoming a pirate hunter. Why do we think that this is going to be bad? Firstly, it means that you are likely to go to jail. Jail probably like prevents you from accessing like other resources. It also means that like you might face heavy fines and lose a lot of your money. It also means that like perhaps you can't find occupations in the future, and like people don't like you because you now have like been stigmatized and labeled as a pirate, versus on our side where you are let go with a clean record, right? But also secondly, and very importantly, depending on what you've done in the past, and it's very likely that you've committed like murder and a lot of really horrible things, you probably are just going to get killed by King George, or like when you get put into jail, like eventually you're going to have to face a death sentence. So that probably means that this is not something that you want to have happen to you, right? For all the reasons we give you above as to why death is probably the worst outcome for this individual. Second argument then, why we think being a pirate probably isn't so great. First thing to know, like you might just die as a pirate, even if you don't go to jail. Like there's lots of murder and treason and like general bad things that happen to you. Pirates hold a lot of grudges against each other for various reasons. There are different clans that exist. It's probably like super dangerous out in the sea when there are like no rules and restrictions on the things that you can do. So there's a very, very good chance of you dying out there. But also like that necessarily means that there's a lot of fighting that happens, which means that you have to probably weigh death above all, because even if you are moderately successful, on the off chance that you you never know what's going to happen, you could be ambushed, you could like lose all of your wealth overnight because somebody like took all of your money. That necessarily means that they don't have any kind of stability, versus on our side of the house, if you at least concede to King George at first, he probably like is going to support you, provide you with some kind of support, provide you with like some boats. You also probably have like other pirate hunters that you can work with necessarily to fight off the opposition, and you can probably also store your wealth in certain places to make sure it's not just looted when you're on a ship, right? That necessarily also means that the benefits of pirating decrease significantly after this policy is implemented, because previously you would be able to like roam free, and now you probably can't do that. So you lose a lot of the gains that you've also made. That necessarily also means that you can't work with other pirates anymore, because traditionally pirates earn money by working with other pirates and then sharing the benefits of that. You can't do that anymore, since it might be a sting operation. Also, you're just like generally quite worried that someone is going to sell you out, which means that it's very much likely that you want to engage in lone wolf operations that significantly decrease the amount of financial revenue that you can come in. That secondly also means that there are a lot of like areas like geographically that you can no longer try to loot or find resources for. That necessarily means that your ability to gain more capital is significantly limited if you try to continue your current occupation. And it also just means that you face like a significant degree of stress on their side, right? Like you might not be able to sleep because you're worried about like all the harms that could accrue if like you fall asleep and like some somebody ambushes you and tries to kill you, but also there's just really bad potential long-term financial gains and emotional well-being related issues that probably mean that like being a pirate at the end of the day is going to be no bueno for you. All right, then. Third argument about the individual benefits that accrue when you take this deal. Firstly, money. We tell you that money is probably good because it means that you can buy things that make you happy. And since we don't know much about this individual, like we probably just want to give them more choices to do things that make them happy right now, right? Like even you have the money that you have right now from being moderately successful, plus the potential for like large sum payments of like for hunting like pirate hunters in the future, for hunting pirates in the future. Like even if you aren't that successful, at least you have like some money that you have from your previous gains, and you can also probably like hire some security guards or ask the king for something for your own protection if they try to make arguments about how pirates are going to get mad and hunt you down. Also, if you already like sold all of them out, then then the pirates are getting killed or being put in jail anyway, so it's unclear how they would actually be able to like end up hurting you in the long run. But also it's just probably quite easy to capture other pirates on our side of the house. Like you can do things like say, hey, like meet me at X place, let's fight the king together, and then just end up blocking them up, to the extent in which the king probably wants to supply you with a ton of resources because the king has an incentive to capture pirates. I think the king probably has more resources, has more manpower, and has more like boats and ships than like individual pirates roaming out in the sea. So if any kind of like fight does happen, it's probably other people that will die in the process of that fight. And it also means that you're likely to win that fight and be able to capture those pirates in question. So that means we get the backing of the royal kingdom as well as other pirates who have jumped ship, making being a pirate hunter significantly easier compared to the analysis we've proven about how you're likely to be super terrified in the alternative and have to engage in like lone wolf operations as a pirate, right? But secondly, and very importantly, there's the perception of security. That means like not just about your like actual financial stability, but also the fact that you feel pretty safe. You don't have to constantly worry about someone coming for you. That has significant tolls on your mental health that make it very difficult for you to live, or at least live a happy and fulfilling life on the opposition side of the house. The third important thing to note is just having a clean record is really good, right? Because you can take the money you've earned and do anything. Now, we don't have to defend you being a pirate hunter forever. Like you can probably just switch at some point on our side, but still be able to function as a normal being in society since you have a clean record and you don't have a target on your head. You probably have a lot of cool skills that you learn from being a pirate, and like there aren't resumes, so it's not like you need to tell people about your past occupations, which makes it really easy for you to start over. You can have like, you probably have some general conception of money. You're probably quite good at physical labor. You have like big buff muscles. You could even start up a family if that's what you want. You can probably like read the room. You probably have a decent personality. I think pirates are pretty cool. So for all these reasons, proud to propose.
I thank the speaker very much for the fine speech, and to open the opposition of this debate, I call on the leader of opposition. Here.
Okay. Starting 2, 1. It's nice to know that Gov has seen Pirates of the Caribbean. However, that's not how piracy was actually practiced. Couple of framing characterizations before I go into our offensive material. Okay, the year is 1717. What does that mean? It's directly after the Spanish War of Succession. Because of the peace treaties that were implemented by the English and Spanish, because of the English's aid to Spain afterwards, it means that there are now far fewer ships in the ocean, which is what led to the uptick in piracy in the 1700s. Ultimately, pirates are ex-soldiers, or ex-sailors, not soldiers, ex-sailors who are made redundant by the fact that shipping in these kinds of waters has gone down a lot because, and this is really crucial, sailors have specific training to be sailors. They usually start at a very young age. Most of their skills have to do with being on a ship, and at the point at which employment on ships is ultimately scarce, they have no choice but to find another avenue to exercise their skills but still make money. So what do they turn to? They turn to piracy, where they can exercise the only workable skills that they actually have, but then also make money in a way that is actually sustainable, as I'll explain to you. First, let's talk about the best case scenario. Rebuttal will be integrated, but I'll flag where on the flow I'm specifically talking about. Okay, let's say that you take the pardon, you ultimately get a clean record that's wiped, and you get a bunch of money. 4 reasons why having a clean record doesn't matter. First of all, you don't have a family to go back to. A lot of the reason why sailors go into this profession in the first place is because they don't have anyone tying them to the shore. But secondly, cross-apply what I already told you. A lot of people become sailors when they're really young, which means that they don't have the opportunity to start a family at all. There's nobody waiting for you on the shore if you do go back. You have no support system because all of your friends and colleagues are sailors. But secondly, remember that you're a redundant sailor. Cross-apply what I told you before. before. Because there's a decrease in ships, literally the reason why you turn to piracy is because you can't get employment elsewhere in a normal industry. It means that there's not going to be any opportunities for employment for you too. Cindy tries to tell you that like you have skills that can be applied to other areas. No, you literally don't. You know how much specialized knowledge it takes to run a ship, and you know how that knowledge can't be applied to anything else? We don't have like normal steamers. This isn't like a luxury vessel. No, you need to know how to tie knots. You need to know how to like swab decks. That's not stuff that can easily be applied to anything else. And the fact that it can't be applied to anything else is specifically why you turn to piracy. But then third is the taste of adventure. Notice that everybody measures the goods in their life in comparison to other kinds of things, which means that even if you find gainful employment on the shore, you're always going to be comparing that to the glamorous life of a pirate, which means that every life seems really, really bad by comparison. You're going from pure freedom. You don't have to be beholden to anyone. You don't have to be beholden to laws. You probably get some pretty good loot. And ultimately, on the shore, you're probably confined to a life of poverty. Maybe you get some money in the beginning, but that runs out pretty quickly. There's not a ton of employment for you. And England is in a massive recession following the support for the Spanish War of Succession. It's probably pretty bad for you. But then finally, you have a pretty low risk of capture. Notice that you don't have any of the tracking technologies that we have now. They try to tell you, oh, like the king has a bunch of ships and it's going to like follow you. But first of all, notice that the crown is in massive debt. That's part of what led to the resurgence of piracy in this era. But then also notice that like, even if the crown does have a bunch of ships, the fact that you're in the top 30 percentile of pirates probably means that you're able to avoid them because you've been able to avoid them up to now. But then on the terms of money, so first of all, on the fact that you're going to get a bunch of money, I think that like there are two responses to this that are pretty easy. First, you have no experience in financial planning, right? You've been living paycheck to paycheck as an underpaid sailor for your entire life since you've been able to spend your own money, which means that if you get a massive influx of cash, you have no idea how to spend it. It's just true that whenever people get massive influxes of cash, they typically don't spend it in ways that are like sustainable. They don't spend it on things like private security. And also, because you're already poor, the amount of money that you get probably seems massive to you, but it's not massive in general. And if you go back to the shore where now you have to pay for things like housing and you have to pay for things like food, which were previously supplied for you by your employer on a sailing ship, ultimately, you're not going to have as much money as you think you do, but also the expenses are going to accrue really quickly. This money is going to run out and then you're left with nothing. You're unskilled, you're unemployed, you have no family, you have no support. You're just going to live a life of destitution. Even death at a relatively young age is probably better than that. But then second important point here is about why you're going to die either way. Couple of points on this. First, about the decision calculus. Notice that at the point of the motion, you haven't made the decision about whether to take this deal yet, which means that given that you know that the crown probably hates pirates, you think that if you make this deal, the king is just going to kill you. You have no epistemic access to whether or not this deal is legitimate. It might just be a ploy by the crown to kill as many pirates as possible, which means that you should always err to the side of safety. Given that you don't know whether or not this is going to be successful, it's probably better to not get killed by the crown, which is the most likely response given that the crown has probably been hunting you this entire time. But then second of all, notice that their analysis about you having to sleep with one eye open because someone else might rat you out goes both ways, right? So everybody else is also going to be sleeping with one eye open to try and get you and figure out if you're a rat, which means that if you do this and other people find you out, pirates have no qualms about literally killing you if they think that you're going to desert them or rat you out, which means that it's always better to not even give them that suspicion. Don't even do that at the point at which it's probably going to be better for you. But then second of all, notice that like the logistics of this are really difficult. Like if you were to make this deal, you'd have to meet with someone from the crown. You'd have to figure out a way to smuggle other pirates to them. You'd have to be able to communicate messages to them when you're on a ship and there's no internet and no way to communicate with them, which means that you're probably going to be acting really suspiciously. At that point, the fact that you make this kind of deal and then go back is really easy to detect by other pirates who you've been living with for a long time, probably know a lot about your habits and aren't able to do this. So at the point at which they tell you that this is like beneficial, I think literally the logistics of this count against them is not necessarily true. But then finally, notice that the fact is that brotherhoods need to be present on ships in order to run. You need to curry a sense of brotherhood and a sense of camaraderie among shipmates in order for those shipmates not to rebel against the captain of the ship. Notice that even pirate ships have captains. They need to have some allegiance to each other in order for that not to happen. And at that point, and at the point at which they've literally, not that many of them have been living on a ship together, they have some sense of personal allegiance. You don't want to rat out your friends, right? You don't want your friends to rat you out. So at that point, I think that there's probably a lack of desire to rat out your friends for a relatively small amount of money when you literally have had experiences trying to find other kinds of employment and haven't been able to find them. But finally, about why hunting is more dangerous. Okay, here's the other thing, is that pirates don't hunt other pirates. And this is the misconception that comes from Pirates of the Caribbean. No, what pirates did is they targeted merchant ships that were most of the time insured, right? Insurance happens here. So what happens when a pirate targets a ship is that the merchants give up the loot really, really easily because they know that they can just recoup the cost of all the loot at the point at which all of it is insured, which means that pirates probably have experience only targeting ships that they know are easily going to get them a lot of capital in a not very dangerous way, because there's literally no incentive from these ship captains to hunt them or go dangerously towards them. Additionally, they're probably aware of other pirates in the region. They have no incentive to hunt other pirates in the region when they can just get rich off a couple of ships. But then finally, at the point at which you're moderately successful, you have experience getting around both other pirates and the government. Additionally, if you're in the top 30 percentile of pirates, you probably are better than all the other pirates. I don't think that their offense about how other pirates are just going to get you actually applies here. Ultimately, I think that there are a ton of reasons, including a taste for adventure, to vote for the op. Very, very proud to oppose. Let's go rob some ships, everyone.
I thank the speaker very much for the very fine speech, and I'll call on the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible? Oh, sorry. Am I audible? Oh, perfect. Two things in this speech. I want to talk about individual security and additional benefits that come, whether it be economically or getting other forms of employment. So firstly, in terms of individual security, we told you clearly from the top of this debate that other people will sell you out. We get a flimsy response from opening opposition that says, oh, but you don't have tracking tech, or you can avoid ships. Sure, at this point, all of their analysis on you not being able to look into the future still apply. In that case, you don't really know the extent to which you're going to be able to avoid other ships. You don't really know the extent to which other people are, or how trackable you are. But furthermore, a lot of pirates share information amongst themselves when they operate together. Maya literally talks about how you have brotherhoods within ships and how there's orders of command. If you're higher up in the allegiance, you probably know how other pirates operate, and you also know that other individuals around you know how you operate, and that means that they know the ways in which you work, they know where to wait for you. All of these things are already possible. I don't think their response is adequate. But the second thing that they say is that, oh, you're going to die either way because you think the crown will kill you. One, the crown will not do that because they would lose credibility. Two, the crown will probably think you're useful to some extent if they want to hunt down on pirates. And three, I think we probably have fiat in this debate that this does not, that the crown will honor their deal. I don't think this matters that much in the round. I think there are three reasons on the comparative why you're going to have much more security under our side of the house. One, you are backed by much larger resources. The thing is, when Maya tells you that you're still going to have to loot individuals in order to survive, given that there are far fewer ships to loot as a result of the fact that they themselves say that the number of ships have decreased. If that is the case, you're going to have to compete with other pirates in order to make sure that you're the one being able to loot these these ships successfully. We would say that if that is the case, you're still going to have to face all the consequences of insecurity. What is the comparative under our side? You have much greater resources to back you with. Why is that the case? Because one, the crown supports you, and two, you are supported by individuals who also sold out, meaning that you have much greater resources as opposed to under their side, you're going to be working entirely alone in a much more difficult circumstance. I don't think they ever deal with this comparative. The second reason why you're comparatively more likely to get security under our side of the house is because there's informational asymmetry, i.e., if the king wants this operation to succeed, you probably want to tell each pirate which pirates sold out and which pirates didn't sell out, and therefore you know which of your friends sold out, which of your brothers sold out, and which of your and which of your co-workers didn't sell out. But if you didn't sell out, you don't have that information. So on one hand, if you didn't sell out, you're fearing and trying to avoid every single pirate out there, as opposed to under our side, there's only a select few group of individuals that you know that you have to avoid. And that means that taking care of yourself and making sure that you're safe is much easier under our side of the house. We would say that given that that's the case, I don't think they ever really win the comparative on why you're going to get security. Additionally, we would say that if it is the case that this is after the Spanish War and there aren't that many sailors out there, things like pirate ships being out there is going to stand out much more, and therefore you're much more likely to get caught, as opposed to under our side when sure, you may stand out, but nonetheless you have more resources to protect you with. Why does security matter more than anything else in the round? One, you care about yourself, and any other moral claims that they make about how you probably care about your friends don't matter in the round. Because in a large number of cases, like sure, they might be friends, but they're also coworkers, and you don't owe them any specific obligation. Whereas you know what exactly your interests are, and therefore you owe yourself something to make yourself and protect yourself. We think they never really warrant and explain why those why you have obligations to the people you work with. But secondly, Cindy already told you that like security is the prerequisite for any relationships you carry on, any trust with other people you have, any monetary benefits. So insofar as most of their analysis doesn't have anything to do with security, we think security matters more than like gaining some more money. And in this case, we think you have to be particularly risk averse. And the reason for this is that like if you lose your life or if you get caught, there is no second chance that is granted to you, i.e. like you're going to be put in jail or you're going to be killed. So you're not going to have any other opportunity. If this is your one-shot opportunity, we think you need to be much more careful and make sure that you can avoid the worst case scenario that could possibly happen. But three, you're the only one that will care about this because no one else has the incentive to do so, due to the fact that other actors will also care a lot about money and also not commit to saving you or protecting you, and therefore you need to rely on yourself. We think we think security is the most important thing in the round, and we tell you on a comparative why security is much better granted on Gov side of the house. Before I go on to talk about additional benefits, I'll take a POI from closing.
Yeah, so the point at which people start selling out and you think they have is the point at which you start to question the fundamental values, lifestyles, entire belief you've premised your life and decisions on, given how much you've given up in terms of family and stability. I'm not sure why you wouldn't cloister into that identity and seek out the affirmation of people who share your values as opposed to rejecting it yourself.
Yeah, so if your argument is that once some people sell out, you're going to question the choices that you have made, then that's symmetric on both sides. Like on both sides, some people will sell out. And on both sides, you're going to say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have trusted my pirate friends so much. The meaningful difference is under our side, we get security. Under your side, you don't. So like this is totally symmetric. I don't think this matters much in the round. Second, I want to talk about additional financial benefits. And here's where I think a lot of the claims made by opening opposition are quite interesting. OO first says that you can't get employment elsewhere. If this is true, I think being a pirate hunter is better employment than being like a pirate. The reason for this is that one, your paycheck is much more reliable, i.e. you know for sure that the king will pay you. But secondly, we would say that this is better employment because you have like much better working conditions, i.e. you're not going to be working alone, you're going to be working with other coworkers. There's like levels of protection that is granted to you. So even if their argument is true that you don't have any other skills, it's probably preferable that you work as a pirate hunter. But secondly, I think it's just an assertion that you don't have any other skills. Like Cindy told you that you've learned a lot of things and built up more experience as a result of being a pirate. I'm sure you can find other skills. The final thing that opening opposition talks about is that you can get a taste of adventure. First of all, also not symmetric, given that also symmetric, given that like being a pirate hunter is probably also an adventurous thing to do. But secondly, I don't think adventure matters as much in this debate because the reason why people value adventure is because despite the thrill, they have the guarantee and they know that they can survive at the end of the adventure, because otherwise like the whole thing would be pointless and the whole thing would be a thrill. We think under our side, we get that like level of security as opposed to under their side where you can't. The final thing I want to talk about is that even if you buy all of their analysis on how you can still loot other ships, their own context makes getting rich by being a pirate really, really difficult. Not only do they not engage with a lot of Cindy's points on how like you can't get rich anymore because you can't cooperate, but if their claim is true that there are less ships in the ocean and that there are less merchant ships as a result of that, then that means that there aren't as many like ships you can loot or like people you can sabotage and earn money out of doing that. And that means that you can't get like the additional benefits that they want to cling this debate on. Very proud to propose.
I thank the speaker very much for this very fine speech, and I'll call on the DLO to close the first half of this debate already. Here. DLO?
Hi, are you able to hear me okay? Okay. Panel. Hardy, hardy, har. A pirate's life for me. I think if you gut check a lot of what we heard out of the opening government, but particularly the DPM, I think you're probably going to find it extraordinarily intuitively inconsistent with what we understand pirates to be. Even if we take the glamorized Pirates of the Caribbean characterization coming out of opening government, why is it then that those people are ones who would care about, I quote the DPM, working with colleagues or having a reliable paycheck? I think the types of things that incentivize these people are particularly the risk and thrill of living life out on the sea outside the scope of the law. But I think particularly when you think about the types of characterizations that Maya gave you as well, in terms of being sailors or ex-sailors, people who genuinely enjoy being out on the water, or rather sailors or ex-sailors who were like fired by the government, made redundant, harbor resentment towards the government in terms of having laid them off, having made political decisions that compromised their economic security over like what the realm was doing, probably means that they're particularly resentful for the government, don't want to go and work with them. But I think thirdly, a lot of pirates, and this is an additional layer of characterization I would give you, are almost certainly criminals in terms of not being able to find employment on the ground. And so they also go abroad, which means that the types of things that they are invested in, are interested in, are particularly living outside the law because they already live outside the law. And that's the types of things we've shown you already motivate them, that make them happy. I don't understand why they would want to go live inside the law, even if the DPM characterizes you that you're doing a lot of the same things, although hasn't responded to all the ways that it's meaningfully more dangerous for you. The second observation I would make that the DPM also just doesn't make sense when we're talking about the amount of ships available, right? They say, because there's less sailors, that means now you have a higher chance of getting caught. I actually think that means that you have far less of a chance of getting caught. And so I think intuitively this means that now is the perfect time not to give up the piracy life because there's less sailors on the waters, which means that there's a maximal chance of being able to live out and do all the things that you want to do. Intuitively, if you also link to the historical analysis, but also just like a gut check, why would King George ever offer this if he had meaningfully had the resources to catch you legally with his own troops? He would have already done that. The only reason that he made this deal is because he knows that there's no way for him to catch the scores of pirates that he sees out on the sea. And this was his last ditch effort to try and get people to come in on their own. But that's particularly compelling if you consider the historical context that Maya gave you. But importantly, the height of colonialism, yes, means there's less sailors on the water, but that means there's far more settlers. So in terms of economic opportunity, I also think it's ridiculous for them to say that you should stop being a pirate because there's less ships on the water. I think that one, you can just go to different places, go off the West Horn coast of Africa. There's plenty of colonization happening there, which means settler ships going back and forth, plenty of ships for you to rob. Secondarily, even if there are less cargo ships on the water, one cargo ship is still enough to feed you and your mates for an entire year. And so there's still meaningful economic opportunity in terms of hunting these types of ships that particularly make you happy. Next clash in this debate is the decision to do this safe. They say, they're all in the same boat. Others are likely to buy it. I think that, one, this is particularly unresponsive to all the types of mechanization that Maya gave you. And I think this idea that they're going to want to live a life of safety is completely incongruent with their decision to live a life of piracy to begin with. I think, one, they have no family to go back to, and or if they did, their family would probably reject them for having lived a life of barbarism and rape out on the high waters. And so even if they had family, at this point, there's no reason to go back to it. I think secondarily, they have no reason to go back to those types of jobs that are they have no reason to enter into the type of gainful employment that the government is propping, because it doesn't provide them the same era of risk. There's a famous allegory from Sun Tzu where Sun Tzu said, if I wanted to make it so that people hurt other people for fun stopped doing it, I would simply make it legal. Because part of what compels them to do this and what they find and derive so much joy out of is this idea that I'm acting outside the scope of the law, and that's where they substantiate and create their sense of identity, and that's how they constitute themselves in relation to the state. And viewing themselves as a part of the state is the opposite of what many of them want to do, just from an identity standpoint, let alone the sailors pissed at the government standpoint that I already told you, let alone Maya's analysis about why this is probably going to be a dangerous decision to try and make. Because logistically, how would it even work? You would have to wait until you're in a port where everyone knows one of the governors are who's invited all this pirates to join them, which means everyone's going to be on high alert. Everyone on the ship is has their eyes out to see if someone's going to do this. I think you're particularly likely to get caught before you ever even make it there, before you ever even have access to the types of guards and troops and protections that they wanted to talk about. But I think secondarily, again, there's no response to the brotherhood analysis that Maya gave you. And I think this is a particularly powerful mech. Why? One, literally literally all ships and all sailors around the world in the status quo, and as long as the dawn of time, have done this, because it's the only one when people are in a confined space for a long period of time to make them not go crazy and kill each other, is create sense of familial bonds towards each other. But secondarily, even if you don't buy that, or if that doesn't apply to all pirates, what applies to the other ones is literally self-interest. Pirate ships in any type of ship, especially in the 1700s, is extraordinarily complex. And the only way that the ship runs is that everyone's doing their part. And so you have to have a team dynamic, and you have to care about other people, and you can't be willing to just butcher other people, because then there's no one to do their job. And it's far more dangerous if a storm hits the next day and you don't have enough hands on deck in order to be able to deal with the storm. And so even out of your self-interest, you care about other people. But before I move on, I'll take something from Closing Government. Okay.
So it seems like this person that you're describing has no problem with going against everything that he cares about, considering your characterization of them going against the state. So why would they care about going against other pirates?
I've told you that the reason why they want to go against the state is because they feel like the state has wronged them. The reason why they want to go against the state is because they're already a criminal and they've constituted themselves externally in relation to the state. That does not translate to not giving a shit about anything or anyone, especially if these pirates are the only people who've ever accepted you, especially if you spent years living in close quarters on the ships with these people. These people are the only family you've probably ever had. You've done horrible, risky things together with them, or not even that risky, but you've done things together that like create a sense of bonds that bring you together. The next thing I'd like to say is that also, I think what wins this debate all by itself is, why would you ever trust the state, right? DPM is correct that you can fiat, or I will just be very charitable, that it would probably be safe, but that doesn't respond to Maya's analysis pointedly, which was perceptional, that even if you can guarantee that the state wouldn't kill them, pirates don't know that. And especially given all of OG's analysis about how dangerous the state is and how it's been hunting you for years, you have no reason to believe that they would trust you, that you should trust them, right? The only response we get from the DPM is, credibility, right? I think the opposite is true. The state will probably get more credibility by killing a bunch of pirates and then selling that back to the public, especially a public that's pissed at you for having lost the war, pissed at you for having gone in debt. And so it's a particularly good way to make up for that credibility argument. But even if there's no credibility gains there, you don't have any reason to spark backlash or concern about the crown's credibility, because if a couple pirates go missing, no one knows about them, no one cares about them. You have no social capital, you have no political capital. There's no social media to do a campaign on. No one will find out about it anyways. And so in fact, the state is greatly incentivized to kill you. But then last and not least, it's a horrible decision to make because of your personal risk, right? It's not easy to catch others. There's no cell phones to call them. And in fact, they're probably going to be extra pissed at you because you were viewed as the traitor that left the Brotherhood. But even in general, you're not trained for this. You spent your entire life attacking unarmed cargo ships, many of which were insured and handed over the cargo quite willingly. And so engaging in combat against other pirates who are fleeing for their lives is where you see the most risk to yourself. You know this because you've spent your entire life avoiding risk by attacking unarmed cargo ships. It doesn't make sense for you to engage in a far more dangerous position that risks your life. I think regardless if you look at risk of life, regardless of whether you just can't trust the crown, regardless if your Brotherhood kills you before you can ever get there, or regardless of the fact that it's a great time to be a pirate, why would you ever stop? Hardy har, proud to oppose.
I thank the speaker very much for this fine speech, and I'll call on the member of government to open the second half of this debate. Here.
Okay, can you hear me? Maybe I'm getting old, but I feel that this debate is somewhat confusing. I think we're getting two very contradicting notions from OO. On the one hand, we have the scenario in which the pirates don't really want to be pirates. They just have to be there. They have no other jobs. Ooh, they hate being a pirate. They just can't do anything else in England. It's so horrible. Now, we think that if this is the case, then actually, what is then the point of remaining a pirate? Why then go on with the thing that you were forced to do? You didn't want to. Now you have the option of abandoning it. Now you get money. Now you get immunity. Now you're not an outlaw. It didn't matter that you were forced into it, and so on. So here, if you accept this scenario, there's an easy way out. A get out of jail free card. And here we say that you can just take the pardon and move on. But if we get the other characterization coming from them, I love being a pirate. This is such a great thing. I want an adventure. I want to get the easy money, and so on. Then, in that case, we think that in our side, you can still get all of the fun without then having a lot of problems. Because notice, what is the proposition that the king is offering? They are not only offering you the immunity, but they are offering you to be a pirate with their flag. They are basically offering you to be a pirate with a navy. Now we think that this allows you exactly to continue on the way of life that you've had, but now you are getting more resources because you did get money that you can, if you want, spend on your ship, spend on your crewmates if you want to bribe them, spend on your lucky parrot if you want, and so on. You also get to do the same thing as you did, plus you have territorial water, plus you have protection from any trial, plus you have the ability, if you want, to loot from other ships because King George I is not going to know exactly how much money was on that Spanish armada that you've just brought in, welcomed as a hero, coming back to England. So we say that already on this comparison, your life becomes better. Now they try to tell you, but your pirate friends. So here we say that there is a big difference between pirate friends on your ship, your crew, and other pirates. Notice that it's a false characterization that pirates worked in harmony. We think that they were a bunch of outlaws that each of them operated singularly. That is why we hear a lot of stories of mutual looting, of competitions on who is the best pirate, who's going to be remembered in the best way. I think that already goes to show that when pirates needed to, they did what was best for them. We think that they don't have a special obligation. Moreover, we think that they're generally dodgy people. They don't mind skinning other tribes that they meet. They don't mind betraying the state. They don't mind doing a lot of things that we would consider immoral. And we don't think here that there's a difference. But then there is your own crew. Now notice here that this is a crew that has served you loyally. We think that you have the ability as a pirate to A, flaunt a lot of money that is given to them as well. B, you can tell them of how many great adventures you're going to have. This is the kind of motivation that you have given them all of the time in order to catch faraway treasures in horrible places and to go over storms. We don't think that this is going to change the moment you switch sides because you've already done that with them in many other circumstances. But then there is the idea that they're telling us, well, but what happens if you get caught and how can you trust this deal? So firstly, we say that we do have historical hindsight to say that this is a real deal. We know that this has worked. B, we think that it's also possible for us to wait a bit to see someone who's gotten the money but then thirdly, we don't understand why the default of having epistemical not enough knowledge to go against this. I think that you should actually trust a king because notice that for years and years and years, kings have gained more and more power on the expense of other outlaws in Europe. Moreover, after this war being said, there were European treaties to go against pirates, meaning that you see that the kings are on the rise. And even if they don't have power at the moment, they are likely to have that, especially also that after a war, there is a time of a boom, just like we've seen with other wars. And you know what happens with England? Well, they get India, which is a major boom. And you know what India requires? Ships. That's why I think that if I were that pirate, and in this debate I am, I would actually trust that more than the risk of not knowing whether I get caught or not. So if they're worried about not knowing, I think there is less knowing on their side because they're just trusting the fact that, oh, things would get better, unlike a king that is very likely to be strong. Before I continue, I'll take Josh.
You have no mechs for why pirates are likely to get caught, but even that aside, it's not a get out of jail free card. It's a get out of jail and do a much more dangerous job fighting people who are hunting for their lives with, as you said, under the king's flag, which is a huge target on your back.
So I think if they like it, they would like the risk as well. If you think that they see no value in their life, I think that this actually gives them more. But also, you didn't analyze why this is riskier necessarily considering the new situation. Your risk analysis was on the world before the motion and before the proposition. Now, obviously, it's easy to go and loot if there is no one against you, but if you have all of the European kings going against you, well, I think that's something else. But then there's the question of identity and selling out and so on. So first of all, once again, in tension with the fact that you were forced to. But also we say that the pirate ethics is a very individualistic one and relies a lot on outsmarting, cunning, and so on, being very brave. Now notice that if you take money from the government, you've actually outsmarted them because you were an outlaw, and then guess what? Instead of going to jail, you're taking their gold. I think that's kind of a cool, brave story to tell others. But also, we think that even if you die, and this is a risk that you take, there is the consideration of the afterlife. Notice that a lot of pirates cared about what would be said about them. They created legends about them. They dyed their beard in a certain way to be known. We think that there are more chances of you to go down in the history books if you are on the winner's side, if you are on the side of people that actually write. People of the sea do not write. However, the people in the king's court do write. And if you want to be remembered in a legendary way, in a way that actually tells about your brave story as a pirate, I think that at this point of history, actually siding with the king makes this makes this much better. So for all of those reasons, we say even if you live, even if you die, no matter what scenario you get in the debate, the king is best.
I thank the speaker very much for their great speech, and I now call on the member of the opposition to bring in the last 2 minutes of the debate. Here.
Am I audible? Wonderful. 1 second to set up my timer. So 2 main clashes that we hear on our top half today. We hear how mainly like which side of the house could provide the most reasoning for financial security. We also hear about individual security. But before tackling those points of engagement, I would like firstly to like engage with the specific point how sorry, I kind of lost my way there. Okay, anyway, let's start on financial security because the first point is something I'll tackle later on in my speech. So in financial security, we think that we equally get like financial security on both sides of the house. So like, and generally, like we see that there is a certain benefit in like going on to be a moderately successful pirate, like looting whatever you see fit. But at the same time, we see that there could be some sort of financial benefit on the other side. But we don't think that this should be a viable metric of this debate. Because in generally, like both sides of the house, you are able to like get some sort of like financial gain, whether or not. But like we think that one of them is more stable than the other. That's something I'll go on and explain further on in my speech. But when it comes to individual security, that's also something I'll counter. I will rebut. I will integrate that rebuttal into my speech. But I just like to generally tell that exactly. The exact points that OG used to justify their arguments are actually a bad thing against them. But also we hear on CG how piracy about what piracy is. Like they questioned piracy whether you choose it or not. Like in the beginning of their speech, they said that mainly like they could still pursue that thrill, but we think piracy is more than just helplessness or like thrill. That also responds to their case that the pirate ethic is individualistic and relies on outsmarting people. We don't think that's the essence or the core of piracy. We think that this could be an incentive, but like the pirate's real ethic is rejection of authority. We think that a pirate lives on freedom. They do not have any incentive to like listen to a higher authority because all they care about is their personal gain. But also like we think that in this specific case they wouldn't like take the deal based on their ethics just because they would refuse to be taking commands from authority. So going on to my extension real quick. So 3 pieces of substantive in this speech. So how would this affect the lifestyle of a pirate, firstly? And secondly, I will talk about what could a clean record do in actuality. But thirdly, I'll talk about the relationship between pirates and then how it tends to affect security. Individual security. So firstly, how would this affect the lifestyle of a pirate? A pirate has been accustomed to a certain lifestyle that consists of freedom, right? Freedom of movement, freedom of behavior, liberty to do whatever they want. And we think this freedom is going to be influenced in 2 ways. Firstly, we think that a pirate who gives up piracy will have to give up his lifestyle for the king, basically. And here on CO, we can't really trust the king, right? We've been told by OO that we can't trust the king, and we buy that. But what they don't really talk about is like what this distrust from the crown could mean to the pirate necessarily, other than the king not maintaining his part of the deal. We're gonna take the best case scenario here. We're gonna dispute that. Even if the king maintains his part of the deal, it does not mean they automatically trust the pirate to hunt others without some sort of surveillance. What this means is that not only will this deal will be potentially dangerous for the life of the pirate, but even in the best case, the pirate is still going to be policed, tailed, and held accountable for whatever they do, or the direction in which they move, or whatever they loot, which also we think counters argument for MCG. And for a person used to freedom, we don't see how the pirate would essentially have incentive to go for such a deal that entails such restriction. Secondly, we think that the pirate giving up the pirate lifestyle would mean that they will have to market themselves again in the community where they can't mobilize their skills. This is something we already hear. But also what we don't hear is how this pirate will be able to fit into a community that alienizes them, right? So pirates have lived all their lives at sea. They have mannerisms that aren't acceptable within local communities. The swearing, the aesthetic, how you choose to present yourself, how you choose to drink, how often the choice of food you tend to have. Imagine wanting to be in an environment where everything meaningful to you is considered disgusting and obnoxious. Can never be me. So again, we also hear about the point of reliability of income on OG. We think that reliability is not guaranteed for two reasons. One reason. We think that the knowledge and the ability to locate makes it less likely for you to find other pirates. We think that the reliance on the crown in and of itself is a principle that stands against everything piracy means and the value that this individual pirate could possess. Like again, liberty, independence, the lack of an authoritative figure. We don't think it's only about the thrill, but also the very principle of your being a pirate. So what could second point real fast, what could a clean record actually do? So we hear on OO that they don't have a family to go back to, but we think it goes deeper than that. It would mean and only mean the fact that the king is no longer prosecuting you. So any legal issue is gone, right? But it does not erase a reputation. People in communities, they're mean, especially smaller communities, more conservative, more exclusive, more weirded out by strangers. What the king could erase is orders to arrest you, get you killed. What he can't control is what their people are going to think of you and how they're going to accept you within their communities. You will still have a reputation of a pirate. You will still be known as a criminal. And that in and of itself will ostracize you from the community you are so desperately trying to fit in. Before going on, I'd like to take from opening if there are any. OG?
Yep. Why does freedom matter more than money when we tell you that money and not dying is a prerequisite to autonomy?
Why does freedom matter more than money? Well, basically what we're talking about here is like the principle that those pirates live by. So why don't we think that the trade-off is worth it? Because mainly, like, why would you trade off your entire lifestyle just to get more money while you can still get some like a relative amount of money, like a good amount of money, like on our side of the house as well. So we don't see how that comparative stands. But going on to my last point for this debate today, the relationship between pirates. Pirates are a network. They don't necessarily like each other, but they have massive network for information sharing. This is something that's conceded on government bench. So we think that on the clash of security, this is what we propose. You, a pirate, become a trader because networking is strong, news travel, and because news travel, other pirates get knowledge that you're hunting them. Therefore, you, as a pirate, are not only targeted by the king, but now you're also targeted by other pirates. Those pirates know what's dear to you. They know what you love, what is valuable to you. They know the way to get it. Maybe a government figure will not know all of this knowledge, but pirates do. They have the means to retaliate. And since you started the harm, we don't think there will be a moral standpoint from which those pirates will look at you and decide not to attack you. So for all these reasons, we are very proud to oppose this motion. Thank you very much.
I thank the speaker very much for that great speech, and I'll call on the government whip to close the side government of this debate. Here.
Can you hear me? Great. Second. Okay. I will start in 3, 2, 1. Panel, let's be real clear here on what the comparative is, okay? Because under the motion, I either stay a pirate as I currently am, or switch to being a pirate as I currently am, only this time the king supports me. We think that this is extremely important to understand the way of life that these pirates are going to be leading after the motion, right? Because Monica tells you, and is gone completely ignored by what we get from closing opposition, that basically this pirate is going to continue living his own way of life the way he knew it. That includes meeting other pirates on the seas, that includes roaming the seas, that includes still being scary and working with your friends on the boat and whatever, and probably to a very large extent never ever going back to shore, right? Because you don't have a reason to, because your life continues to go on as you were used to it on the sea. We think this is extremely important because it also means that questions like the question that we got about how I'm more afraid because I'm being chased are also on both sides of the house, right? Whether I am still a pirate, and whether I'm a pirate under the king's name, I am still a pirate that might be chased by the pirates that are on the other team. We think this is important because it means that I'm still scared, I'm still worried for my life, and in that sense, my life is not changing significantly under this motion. After we sort of framed out a bunch of all these ideas that came up in the debate, the clashes in this debate are going to be, first, this idea of how good my life is going to be. We think this is the less important clash. I'm going to deal with it really quickly and move on to the next ones. What the chances of being caught are, and what the ideals they're leading this pirate is, and what are the things that he actually wants coming true, as opposed to what we heard from our opening half. So let's really quickly go over this whole idea of how good this person's life is going to be, right? Because basically we heard a lot on this from opening half, basically telling us like, opening government saying, oh yeah, staying alive is probably a good thing, and opening opposition basically saying, yeah, but your life is going to be pretty shitty if you stay alive. So we think that first we should point out a pirate's life is going to be dangerous on either side of the house, especially after this motion goes through, right? But also, I mean, after this thing from King George comes out. But also notice that the real important thing of what a pirate wants here is the Clash is going to talk about next, right? On both sides of the house, the life is going to be relatively similar, but we're going to show why the life is better on our side, better than what opening government said, but more importantly, why even if he dies, and this is completely new, he would like it better if he were under the king's flag than not. So really quickly, what did we get on this from government? So opening government tells us, look, stability. It's going to be easy. I'm going to feel safer, all kinds of things like that, right? We think that here, the real important thing to understand is that because I'm effectively continuing the same way of life that I've been leading until now, that is, I'm scared of pirates that are in different clans from me, just as I was before. That is, I'm still sort of looking for ways to get extra, extra money, extra loot, extra whatever, still fighting trade boats and so on. We think that this, right, in the sense that I'm still going to fight pirates instead of fighting trade boats, or the other way around, right? We think that this is not significantly changing on either side. But what we do get, and this Monica points out, we do get legal protection, right? We do get the ability to sort of feel safer generally. We think that this is a significantly better way for this person to live. But more importantly, what does this person want once he dies? And we think this is really important because notice, a pirate is ultimately thinking all the time about what'll happen after he dies, right? He's leading a life of danger. He knows every day he might die because he'll meet pirates from another clan, or because he might get killed by, I don't know, something else, right? So we think that this is another thing that's extremely important for the way a pirate thinks, right? What happens in this clash, right? So we get opposition telling you, opening opposition says, like, basically, this person is always going to want to be working against the law. Notice, we don't think this is significantly different in the sense that, right, you're working under the law now, but you don't have authority. And this is also an answer to closing opposition on this, right? You're not working with an authority in the sense that someone is telling you what to do. You're not working not in freedom in the sense that you have to go by a certain law or a certain order, right? We think that you still have much of your freedom, much of your authoritylessness in the way that you act, right? So then we hear from opening government, look, that the most important thing that's leading these people is money, and that's it. We think that while this is probably true, like money is an important thing to think about, we think that pirates are thinking to a very large extent about how they're going to be remembered, right? Notice that pirates sort of live on what stories have been told to them about past pirates, right? That's like the way like the ideals of pirates sort of come to be. And we think that after years and years of hearing about these pirates, a pirate is going to want to be one of those pirates that everyone hears about, right? Pirate is going to want to be one of those people that is remembered for the better. And we think this is important, right? Because under the king, you're going to be a hero. You're going to be that wonderful person that was able to help Britain fight the biggest problem of that time. Opening.
Your entire argument is predicated on the idea that the king is more dangerous than your fellow pirates. But given the analysis that is unresponded to that I gave you about how your crewmates will be able to detect the slightest change in your behavior, how is a king that's been hunting you for your entire life more dangerous?
Fine. You can stop. Look, the idea is that since you're working with these people, since you can convince these people to work with you, just as Monica explained in her speech, we think that it's extremely unlikely that people who are in your crew are going to go against you, especially because they're going to get so much out of it, right? We think it's just unlikely that that is going to happen. Okay, let's talk about the likelihood of getting caught. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Let's look about the likelihood of getting caught really quickly, because look, this we think is important because basically what we tell you here and what we add that is significant is that we know a pirate knows and understands that the king's power is going to rise, right? He sees what's going on around him. By 1717, this is very visible in the sense that more and more control of the seas is growing. We think that in that sense, this pirate already knows that it's going to have to sort of give it up to the king at some point. We think better earlier than later, and better when you can get a lot out of it, a get out of jail free card